Life always presents us with challenges and adversities. Those who know how to overcome them will survive. Those who turn difficulties into opportunities will be the winners. The 5 most inspiring life stories we are about to share will help you not only become stronger but also open your heart. Story 1: Brooklyn Bridge. Never, never, never give up. The secret behind the Brooklyn Bridge. The Brooklyn Bridge, spanning the river between Manhattan and Brooklyn, is truly a miracle of engineering. In 1883, an imaginative engineer named John Roebling was inspired by the idea of building a spectacular bridge connecting the two cities. However, when he presented this bold idea, no bridge expert was willing to cooperate with him. They thought he was crazy and told him to forget it because such a bridge couldn't be built. Undeterred, he went home and persuaded his son Washington, who was also a talented engineer, that the bridge could be built. Both father and son were determined to complete the bridge and discussed how to overcome all obstacles. Despite the skepticism, the banks believed in them and agreed to fund the bridge project. Excited and enthusiastic, they hired workers and began building their dream bridge. A few months into the project, disaster struck. A construction site accident took John Roebling's life, and his son was severely injured. After the accident, Washington Roebling could no longer walk or speak. Everyone thought the project would be abandoned because only the Roeblings understood how to build the bridge. Although he couldn't move or talk, Washington Roebling's mind remained sharp. One day, while lying in the hospital, he thought of a way to communicate with others. The only part of his body he could still move was one finger, and he devised a code to communicate. Using this code, he tapped his thoughts into his wife's hand, conveying what needed to be communicated to the engineers who continued building the bridge. For 13 years, Washington gave instructions using his one functioning finger until the magnificent Brooklyn Bridge, which we see today, was completed. You will discover a higher version of yourself every time you overcome adversity. Story number 2. What do difficulties and challenges leave behind? The shortest way to escape hardship is to go through it anonymously. A young man was facing many difficulties in life. He felt lost and didn't know what to do. He decided to seek advice from a wise old sage known in the region. After listening to the young man's story, the sage didn't say a word. He quietly went into the kitchen, placed a pot on the stove, poured some water into it, and lit the fire. The young man watched the sage with curiosity, not understanding what he was doing. Once the water was boiling, the sage placed a carrot, an egg, and a lump of salt into the pot. He didn't say anything further, simply waiting in silence. The young man grew increasingly impatient, but he patiently waited for the sage to speak. After some time, the sage opened the pot and took out each item. He placed the carrot, the egg, and the now dissolved lump of salt on the table in front of the young man, and gently said, "Look here, these 3 items have all faced the same adversity, the same boiling water. But the outcome for each is different." He picked up the carrot. Initially, it was hard, but after being boiled, it became soft and weak. Then he picked up the egg. This egg seemed fragile, but after being boiled, it became hard inside. Finally, he pointed to the water in the pot. And the lump of salt, though solid at first, dissolved completely and changed its nature when faced with boiling water. The sage looked directly into the young man's eyes and said, "In life, everyone faces difficulties and challenges. But what's important is how you respond to them. You can become weak like the carrot, dissolve like the salt, or become strong and resilient like the egg. Life is not about what happens to you, but how you handle and overcome it." The sage continued, "A challenge can also become a golden opportunity if you know how to seize it and turn it around. Remember, challenges do not define you, but how you overcome them does." The young man, after hearing this, realized he needed to change his perspective and how he faced difficulties. He thanked the sage and from that moment on, determined to face every challenge with a stronger and more positive mindset. Every challenge brings a valuable lesson. Instead of just seeing difficulties, try to figure out what you can learn from those difficulties. Story number 3. The Hospital Window. The Hospital Window. Blessed are those who bring joy to others in silence. 2 seriously ill men were treated in the same hospital room. One had fluid in his lungs while the other was paralyzed from the waist down. Every afternoon, the man with the lung condition had to sit up for an hour to help drain the fluid from his lungs. His bed was positioned next to the room's only window. The paralyzed man, on the other hand, had to lie in bed all day. They often talked for hours about their families, friends, and life, reminiscing about their memories from their time serving in the military. Each afternoon, when the man by the window sat up, he would entertain his roommate by describing what he saw outside the window. Through his friend's stories, the man in the other bed felt as if he was reliving the vibrant world outside the window. There was a lush park with a serene, blue lake where swans gracefully glided around. Next to it, children floated paper boats on the calm surface of the lake. Couples strolled hand in hand among the blooming red roses. It was a picturesque scene full of color. While the man by the window was engrossed in his storytelling, his bedridden friend would close his eyes, picturing the beautiful scene in his mind. On a warm afternoon, the man by the window described a parade taking place outside. Although the paralyzed man couldn't hear the marching band's music, he could still vividly imagine the grand spectacle. Days quietly passed by. One morning, as usual, the nurse brought water to them and found the man in the bed by the window lying still. He had passed away peacefully in his sleep the night before. After his friend's death, the paralyzed man asked to be moved to the bed next to the window. On his new bed, despite the pain, he struggled to prop himself up to take in the view outside the window. But all he saw was a blank white wall. Later, he learned the truth: his late friend was blind and couldn't even see the wall. His sole intention was to bring joy and comfort to his roommate. We are all angels with only one wing, and we must embrace each other to learn to fly. Story number 4. The Good News. Good news. The meaning of life is not in what it gives us, but in how we approach it, not in what happens to us, but in how we react to those things. Lewis L. Dunnington. A recent university graduate searching for a job entered a creative contest organized by a National University Association. After several rounds of preliminary selection lasting a month, he made it to the finals among the top contestants. He endured the final 3-day mental competition and emerged victorious. The prize was a substantial sum of money, more than he had ever dreamed of during his student life. After leaving the auditorium and escaping the press cameras, he headed to the parking lot. Unexpectedly, a woman approached him, her voice choked with emotion. "Congratulations, sir, on winning the difficult contest. It's an honor for you. I have something to tell you, but I'm not sure if it's appropriate. If you had a young child, you would understand what I'm about to say. My child is severely ill with cancer and is in the hospital. Without a large amount of money." "How much do you need?" the student asked sympathetically after hearing her out. After listening to the woman's story, he handed her the envelope containing his prize money. "May your child overcome this illness. Go take care of them immediately," he said. "Thank you so much, I don't know how I can repay you." The woman, visibly moved, quickly left. A few days later, he returned to his university. Someone approached him and asked, "I heard that after the contest, you met a woman and gave her money to treat her dying child. Is that true?" The young man nodded. "Well, I need to inform you that she's a scam artist. She doesn't have any sick child. You were deceived." After a moment of silence, the young man asked, "Is it true that there's no dying child?" "Yes, I guarantee it," the man affirmed. "Oh, that's the best news I've heard all day," the young man said. "Let's celebrate that no child has to die," he added. Final story. Lessons from a martial arts teacher is about a boy who lost his left arm and becomes a judo champion. Lesson from the martial arts master. Much of our happiness or unhappiness is determined by our character rather than our circumstances. Martha Washington. A 10-year-old boy decided to learn judo despite losing his left arm in a car accident. He studied judo with a Japanese master. Believing that he had been diligent and made progress, he was puzzled as to why, after 3 months of training, his master had only taught him one single technique. Finally, unable to contain his curiosity, the boy asked, "Master, can't I learn other techniques?" The master replied, "This is the only move I will teach you, and it is the only move you need to know." Although he did not fully understand, the boy trusted his master and continued to practice. Months later, the master took the boy to a judo tournament. The boy was surprised to easily win his first 2 matches. The third match was more challenging, but after a while, the opponent lost patience in his attacks, and the boy skillfully used his single technique to win. Still surprised by his success, the boy confidently advanced to the final match. This time, his opponent was a larger, stronger, and more experienced fighter. Soon into the match, the boy was hit repeatedly and was completely dominated by his opponent. At the end of the first round, fearing that the boy would be injured, the referee signaled to end the match early, but the master disagreed. "Let him continue." The master insisted. As soon as the match resumed, the opponent made a critical mistake. He underestimated the boy and let his guard down. Immediately, the boy used his single technique to throw the opponent and pin him to the ground. The boy became the champion. On the way back, the master and the boy reviewed the moves from each match. Gathering his courage, the boy finally voiced what had been on his mind for a long time. "Master, how could I become a champion with just one move?" "You won for 2 reasons. The master replied. "The first reason is that you have almost mastered one of the most difficult and effective moves in judo. The second reason is that the only way your opponents could counter that move is by gripping your left arm. And you don't have a left arm. Sometimes, a person's weakness can become their greatest strength. It is good to have advantages, but being able to turn a disadvantage into an advantage is even more wonderful. Believe in yourself, and you can do anything. Turn adversity into opportunity to achieve better things." Willie Jolly. Thank you very much for watching the video. Wish you a lot of joy and happiness.